It's time once again for another session of the Tool2Type workshop. Let's get started. At the end of Lesson 3, we briefly covered Diacritics and Kerning, but there's more to cover, so in this lesson, we'll take a deeper dive into both. So let's continue with kerning your font and then move on to Diacritics before we tackle the other items I want to cover. You can see that my font is progressing nicely. Let's take a look at the lowercase. Sometimes you'd like to see all your characters on the same line. There's an easy way to fix this. Go into Preferences and increase Text View Width in the Appearance panel. Very good. Since this font has connecting strokes on some of the letters, placing them in the center of the bounding box may not result in the kind of spacing I need. So I'm going to let the connecting serifs determine how I go about the spacing. When I zoom into this I, for example, you can see that the H needs to nudge ever so slightly closer to the I. I'm going to take some time off camera to make minor adjustments to these forms and then show you some useful tips for making your font more consistent with regard to both spacing and kerning. You can see the revised forms are more refined now, but there will be some kerning I'll need to perform, again once all the glyphs are completed. For example, look at the tightness of the EF combination. The E will connect perfectly with other forms, but with this F, I probably want to put more space between them. I suspect this F will be an issue with several other forms, so let's take a look how that F appears in connection to all the other letters. You can create what's called a placeholder that will isolate the performance of a single character when paired with other letters. I'll create a placeholder on both sides of this F. When the cursor is next to a character, the letter in the placeholder changes, allowing me to see the spacing on both sides of the F. Using placeholders takes a bit of getting used to, but they can be of great help in speeding up the kerning process. Scrolling through these letters, it's obvious to me that I need to change the spacing of the F by centering it more in the bounding box, rather than relying on an unnecessary amount of kerning. We all know there are letters that have similar shapes. For example, several of the letters have serifs, making the right side of their forms nearly identical to other letters. This A is a good example. I could give each of these letters the same value on the right, but it would be easier to use the A as a template, so to speak, much like a component. I can assign the same shaped letters to duplicate the space of the A by simply typing the letter A in the right side bearing metrics box. Now I know that serifed forms will have consistent space. If I change the value of the right side bearing of the A, all of the other forms linked to it will also change. This will require clicking the update icon in each letter, or I can do it globally. Notice there are blue triangles in each of these letters. Go to the Glyph menu and select Update Metrics. Now all the letters have the same spacing as the A. I'll change the A again and go back and again update the metrics globally. When I update, all of those characters will again be synced to the letter A. Occasionally, a letter may not be the exact shape as the base form. For example, this letter R has an ever so slightly longer top serif. I can still have it linked to the M, but I can adjust it by performing a little code. So the R will be equal to the M with 5 extra pixels. You may have noticed that I have grouped the kerning of this R with the M. Just as with spacing, if I kern the left side bearing of the M to another letter, it will have the same kerning value. Okay, let's talk more about Diacritics. I had added the legacy forms of the marks, but I want to give the app a little extra power by creating the diacritic combinations. I'm going to copy and paste these marks. Notice the added glyphs have a .001 designation. This is the default when you try to add existing glyphs. The Glyphs app will rename the new glyphs .001, .002, etc. I can rename all of these forms by selecting Command-Shift-F to get this pop-up. I'll change the .001 designation to COMB. This is the correct name for combining diacritic forms. Now that I have these combining diacritics, I will assign anchors to them by going into the Glyphs menu and selecting Set Anchors, or simply typing Command-U. I'll need to perform this with all of the letters that use diacritics. I'll adjust these anchors by placing them in their appropriate positions. Once the anchors are in place, I can add those foreign characters to the font. I'll need to perform this with all of the letters that use diacritics. For example, the cap A. Once the anchors are in place, I can add those foreign characters to the font. Adding anchors to the diacritic marks and the letters that use them is a huge time saver. In the second part of this lesson, you'll see how alternate forms can replace base characters and how ligatures can be helpful in solving some spacing issues. So stay tuned for more Tool2Type learning.